Welcome back to our Beatrice YouTube channel. In today's class we'll be learning how to make this lovely cupcake dress that we see here. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. This is something you like to learn. Kindly stay tuned till the end of this tutorial, and also kindly support us on our new style inspiration channel. The channel name is Larry Fashion and Style, and the link to the channel is on our home page. We appreciate your support. Thank you. To make this, I have folded my fabric into two. This is the front and this is the back. So the front is shorter on the center fold by 1 inch because there's a zipper running through the back. So the half length I'm working with is 8 inches. I added 1 inch extra so that I can join it on the shoulder, and then I can join my skirt to the lower part as well. So the shoulder I'm working with is 9 inches, divided by 2 is 4.5. So I'm starting the 4.5 measurement from the center front, and I'm going to mark it here. Okay, so the neckline that I'm working with, the width of my neckline is 2 inches, and then the depth of my neckline is around 2.5 inches for the front. Okay, the back is going to be a bit lower, so I'm going to work on that later. So on my shoulder I'm going to go down by 1/2 inch for my shoulder slope, and then I'm going to connect it like that. The armhole is 4 inches, and on that point I'm going to take my chest measurement. That's the round bust. So 20 divided by 4 is 5 inches, so I have 5 inches here, and then I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance to that. I'm going to take same measurements on the waistline. If your waist is different from your chest line, then you should use the measurements that corresponds. So here now I'm just going to use my free hand to draw my armhole curve, and then I'll cut this out. So I'm cutting the side seam first, and then the armhole, the shoulder slope, and then I'm going to cut out my neckline. So like I said, for the back I want the neckline a bit lower, so I'm going to remove this now, and then I'll reshape my back neckline. So here I have about 2.5 inches already, so I'll go down a bit more to say 4.5 inches, and I'll mark my seam allowance and then connect this to form a V shape. So you can use your ruler for this, but I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, so this is my V shape, and now I'm going to slash this open. Okay, so this blouse is going to have a satin inside it, and the satin is going to be a bit shorter, around 3.5 or 3 inches shorter, so that to give it that yoke effect. So I'll cut my satin now. So to cut the satin, I folded it into two, and then I'm going to lay the net fabric on it. Okay, so what you're folding should be enough to take your net. So after folding it, I'm going to measure how much I want this net to be higher than the satin fabric. Like I said, I think I'm going to be working with around 3.5 inches. So here on the 3.5 inches mark, I'm just going to fold my net. Okay, I'm going to check again to confirm that. So once I have my 3.5 inches or 3 inches, because I don't want to expose too much. Okay, so 3 inches. Now you can now draw out your new shape, or you can cut it directly, but I'm drawing it out first because I need to turn the satin, so I want it to be neatly turned. So now this is the shape that I have. I'm just going to add like 1/2 inch round this so that I can turn my satin neatly, and then I'm going to cut it out. After cutting it out, I'm going to slash it into two for the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut exact same thing again for my lining. Then after cutting it, we'll move straight to the front. So I just want us to see what it's going to look like. So by the time I sew this with the half an inch, it's going to come down, and then the net is just going to show on just the upper part like this. So for the front, I'm going to put the fabric on fold by 2 again, and then the same way I measured my 3 inches, I'm going to measure that as well and then fold. Okay, so after folding it, I'm going to confirm that I have the 3 inches, and then I'm going to mark it out and cut. So after marking it out, I'm going to mark my allowance as well, and then I'm going to cut this out. So for the center front, you can give it any design you want. For the inner fabric, if you want it straight like this, you can leave it straight. If you want to give it like a style, maybe a sweetheart neckline, you can also do that. So all you just need to do is to come down a little bit here, and then you just style it so that you don't have something too plain. So you can see the shape that I have given this now. So I'll go ahead and cut another one for this as well to serve as my lining, and I'm going to use that to turn the edges. So I'll do this now and then bring it back to show us what we have. I've turned the neckline, okay, with the lining, and this is the front. So I just left the side because I want to use it to turn it neatly. So now you're going to lay your main lace on it. So for this lace, it doesn't frill, so I think I'm going to leave it like this. But if yours is frilling, you may need to hem it with maybe a bias on the armhole area and the neckline, because this is a sleeveless. So you arrange it well. After arranging it well, I'm going to, you can use your hemming glue to just gum them together, or you can just sew it neatly. So when I'm sewing this side, I'm just going to raise the main fabric and sew it, because I'm going to use the lining to turn it out later. So I'm not going to sew the lining together. So this is the front and this is the back. So for the back as well, I've also turned it. So I turned it on the zipper area and also on the neckline and the armhole area. So the next thing is for me to lay this on my main fabric like this, and then I'm going to sew this on the side as well, and then sew it to hold my zipper. So I'll go and do this now, and then I'll bring it back to show us what we have. I have gone ahead to stitch on it like I said, so that I can hold my lace together with my lining, and then I sew it on the shoulder. So after sewing it on the shoulder, now I'm going to sew the side. So to sew the side, I'm going to take it main fabric against the main fabric and lining against the lining, and then I'll measure my seam allowance and sew it round. So on the other side as well, that was why I detached the lining from the main fabric when I was sewing the lace. So I'll match the main fabric against the main fabric and the lining against the lining, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew as well. I have sewn it now, you can see. So I'm going to reduce my seam allowance because I don't want it to be too bulky, and then I'll go ahead and give it a good press. Okay, so after working on the half length, the next thing is for us to move straight to the lower part. So for the under skirt, which is the flare of the lower part, I'm going to be working with a half circle flare. That's a 180-degree flare, and I'm going to show us how I'm going to cut my fabric. So this is what the inner of the half length looks like, and you can see how it is, how neat it is both in and out, and then the lining and the main bodice is detached from each other. So I'll set this aside now, and the radius that you're going to need for the flare is the radius that you're working, is the waistline that you're working with. So for me, it's around 22 inches. Remember, the actual measurement is 20 inches, and then we have 1 inch seam allowance on both sides, so that makes it 22 inches. So the 22 inches, you're going to divide it by 3.142, and you will use that to cut out your radius. So after dividing by 3.142, I have about 6 inches or so. So I folded my fabric in a triangular form. So to fold your fabric, you need to fold your fabric first into two. You fold your fabric first into two, and after folding into two, you fold in a triangular form. So after folding in a triangular form, on this sharp edge here, you measure your radius downwards, and then from your radius you measure your full length. So for me, the radius was around 6 inches, so I measured the 6 inches all around here and then cut it. And then from there, I'm going to deduct my half length, which is 8 inches, and measure where I want this to stop. So for me, it's going to stop around the knee length area, so that's around 18 to 19 inches. So I just made it 20 inches because I need allowance to join it and also to hem it on the lower part. So this is the flay that is going to carry our ruffles. Okay, so now you can actually mark how you want your ruffle to sit, or you eyeball it. So if you want to mark it, so you can mark it maybe 1 inch interval or 2 inches interval, depending on the amount of fabric you have to work with. So you just mark that all around before you start creating your ruffle, or you can just eyeball it and then sew on it. Whichever one works for you is fine. So this is the net that I'm going to be using to create my ruffle. So what you just need to do now is to first fold this net neatly. Then after folding it neatly, we'll measure out around 3 to 4 inches, and then we'll cut it out. So it's going to give us a long strip of fabric, and we're going to cut that out and use that to create the ruffles. I have gone ahead to mark on my flare, and like I said, I want it to be really full, so I just have around 1.5 inches interval, okay, from the first one. So 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces to fill up. And then on the hem area here, you're going to hem it round, or you turn it with your lining, whichever one you want to work with. So now, because I have 1.5 inches interval, I want the first ruffle to just lay on the next one a bit. So I'm going to make my ruffles around 3 inches interval. Okay, so I have arranged my net. I've arranged it very well, and then I'll start to cut my ruffles. So now I said I want it to be 3 interval. The total yard of this net that I have here is 7 yards. I have a 7 yard net, and I have arranged it neatly. So I'll start marking the 3 inches interval like this, and then I'll use my ruler to connect it. So after marking it like this, I'm going to start cutting it out. So that's the first one. So from the first one, I'm going to mark another 3 inches and then I'll connect it as well. So please use your ruler so that you can have something really accurate. So from there now, I'm marking 3 inches again, and then I'll cut that as well. So that's how you're going to mark 3 inches from the beginning here to the hem. The net is about 60 inches in length, so that should give you about, I think, 20 strip or so. So after making these marks now, I'm going to come in with my scissors and then I'll cut it. Okay, so this is the first one. You just cut along the lines that you made. Okay, so for a fuller effect, when you're making your ruffles, you can double each of the ruffles or triple it, depending on the amount of fabric you have to work with and how full you want it to be. So for me, my fabric is not so much, it's just 7 yards, so I'm just going to double it, which means for each of my ruffle I will have 2 strips of net fabric. So now to make the ruffle, I'm going to, you can see how long it is. I'm going to open it up like this and then double it by placing this net on each other. So I'll take it to the sewing machine now and then gather. So I have doubled it now. Okay, I have them placed on each other, and then I'm going to go ahead and gather it on like 1/2 inch here. Okay, so from this line now, I'll go ahead and gather it all around. So after gathering it, I'm going to sew it to the flare. So you can just pick your flare and then sew and gather as you go. Okay, so now you can see that our net is just going to overlap on the next one. So if you can do it, you can just gather as you go, but I think it's easier for you to just make your ruffles, especially if you have a gathering foot. It's going to make the work easier for you. So I'm going to make the ruffles down, and then I'll just sew it on my mark. I have made the ruffles, and this is how you're going to make ruffles for all of the strip of fabric that you have cut out. So now I'm going to bring in the flare, and then on the markings that I have marked, I'm just going to place my ruffle on it like this, and then I'm going to sew. So like I said, you can just make ruffles and sew directly, or especially for beginners, you can make your ruffles separately like this, so that it's not going to be too overwhelming for you. And once you have made your ruffle, you just place it on the lines, and then you sew it all around. So I'm going to make ruffles and then cover up all the lines that I have made, and then I'll bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I have sewn it to the first layer. So the next thing is to go in with the next layer. So when you place the next layer, it's just going to overlap a bit on the first layer like this. So this is how I'm going to fill up all of these spaces, and when the spaces are filled, I'll bring it back for us to see what it looks like. Okay, so I have filled up the all the spaces now, and you can see how full this is looking. So if you do not cut your net well and you feel there is one side that is different from the other, you can just bring in your scissors and then use that to trim it all around. But I'm okay with what I have so far, so I'm just going to continue with it. So this is what the ruffles are looking like. Okay, so if you wish to leave your flare like this, if you want it to be in a flare form, you can actually leave it like this. But I want mine to have this like a round oval shape, so I want it to just fold in. I don't want the hem to be big. So to do this, I'm going to make it like to have like a ball effect. So I'm going to cut a lining, and I'm going to use that to control the hem. So what I did was just to measure around my hem, and measuring around the hem, I have about 60 inches. So I'm going to cut a lining. Okay, I've gone ahead to cut the lining. The lining is about 30 inches long. So I'm going to gather the hem to fit into this lining, and I added this hard net. Okay, so I just wanted to give it that bulkiness a bit. So the length of the lining that I have is about 10 inches, which is 2 inches shorter than my actual flare. The flare is 12 inches, so this lining is 10 inches long, and the width is around 20 inches, just like I explained. So I'm going to use it to control the hem. So you can see me measuring this is 12 inches for the actual fabric, and my lining is 10 inches. So by the time I use it to sew it, it's going to drag my main fabric a bit, which is going to make it shorter. So using 20 inches is fine because it's going to be above the knee, and the child is going to be able to walk well in it, so it's not going to be a problem. So now I'll take this to the sewing machine now, and then gather the hem of my actual dress to fit into the lining that I have. Then after sewing it, I'm just going to flip it and sew to the waistline. So by the time I flip and drag it to the waistline, it's just going to drag my main bodice a bit. Okay, so the dress is just going to be a little above the knee length. So I'll take it to the sewing machine now and sew. So I have gathered it to fit into this space now. So it's now looking round, it's no longer in flare form. So this is the shape that I want. So now I'm going to tuck in this hard net, and then I'm going to sew this upper part to the waistline. So once you sew it, it's going to drag the net a bit. Remember, it's shorter by 2 inches. So I will sew this now to the waistline, and then sew it to my half length. So I have sewn it to the waistline, and you can see that I pleated the excess that I have. So now this is the new shape that I have, and it's in this ball form. So this is how I want it to be. So now I'm going to go ahead now and sew my half length to it. So I'll sew it. Remember, the half length was sewn separately, lining separate from the main fabric. So I'm going to sew the main fabric to the main fabric first, and then I'm going to cut another lining and then sew that to the lining, so that I can conceal these rough edges, especially because this is for a kid and you don't want this part, it's very sharp, you don't want it to be giving the baby discomfort. So you have to make sure that you turn it out neatly. So I'll go ahead now and turn this, and then I'll fix my zipper and then bring it back to show us what it looks like. I have joined the half length to the lower part to form my cupcake dress, and this is what it looks like. And I also fixed my zipper to the back. So now I'm going to turn it to the inner part so that we can see what I was talking about. So here on the waistline, because we have sewn so many nets together, you need it to be really clean like this, so that it's not going to be hurting the baby. So you can see how rough it is on this part, so you need to use your lining to keep it this clean. So this is what I have. This is the wrong part of the dress, and this is the right side. So this is the right side of my dress, and you can see that it is no longer flare, it's just giving me that bulky shape, which is what I want to go for. I don't want it to just be flare, and that is why I used the lining to control the width, so that it can give me this puffiness that I have here. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.